Hello, everybody. Welcome to your post-daily news update for Wednesday, February the 9th. I am John Pollock alongside Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John. How you doing?
I'm doing well. We are at the midway point of the week. It's just flying by, isn't it?
Hump Day is what they call it.
Yes. Do people still call it that?
Some people call it. I don't.
Yeah. I guess all these days just like blend in together for me. Tuesday, Wednesday.
Well, I would say maybe for you and I, and maybe for most people listening to this, I mean it's a day marked by AEW Dynamite. For some people, the highlight of the wrestling week.
For some it is, yes. And tonight they will be in Atlantic City. We'll go through that card tonight and the speculation that is growing of who is going to be appearing on tonight's show from Boardwalk Hall. But we start off with the unfortunate news of the passing of Candi Divine, Candice Ramel, who had a lot of health issues, especially over the past year. It was Greg Oliver who was reporting on this as well this morning of her passing. She had a seizure last April and then suffered a terrible back injury, fracturing her back last year, and then was back in the hospital just recently with issues related to both her brain and liver, and passing away today at the age of 63. She had got into the industry in 1980. And I would think for most, they're going to associate her with her time in the AWA, but she held championships for many, many different regional companies. USWA, worked in Puerto Rico with Monster Ripper, but it was in the AWA where she was a four-time women's champion, feuding with Sherry Martel for a good amount of that period, and was actually the company's last champion before it was deactivated and the AWA went out of business by 1991. And then also got involved with Herb Abrams, UWF. She was part of that Beach Blast event that they did in 1991. And then the final show in UWF's history back in 1994, the infamous Blackjack Brawl at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. And this was a show that Wai and I had reviewed not too long ago. And this was a match that, unfortunately, my major memory from this was announcer Steve Rossi, who just had an impromptu match with the pronunciation of Candi Divine that seems easy enough, but was quite the struggle as Candi Divine was introduced multiple times, and then the announcers tried to cover for him, saying, "Oh, he's just joking around," and then at the end, once again, he was maintaining that pronunciation. But she got out of the industry later in the 90s, and yeah, unfortunately, like 63, that is not too old of an age. So our condolences to her friends and family. She had, had been at least present on social media. You can see some of the highlights there, and you can track down like many of her matches, especially the Sherry Martel matches that are pretty readily available.
Yeah, unfortunately, not somebody before my time when I was really following wrestling, and so I haven't really heard much of her other than maybe some of the reviews that we've done. But 62 is not very old at all. Our condolences to her loved ones.
We'll move on to Raw, and we got the numbers in from Monday's episode on Syfy, where the show did 1,387,000 viewers, with 470,000, 0.36 in the 18 to 49 demo, coming from Brandon Thurston and Showbuzz Daily. So this was clear that this was going to be a drop in viewership. The only question was how much. And looking at what Raw averaged in January as opposed to this past Monday, it looked like it cost them, going against the Olympics and moving to a different station, about 19% in viewership, and 18.5% in their key demo was the drop from January's 5-show average. And I guess the positive to this is that the demo was consistent pretty much from start to finish. Little peaks and valleys here and there, but maintaining the same rating throughout those 3 hours. And women 18 to 49 actually grew 23% from hour 1 to hour 3. Men were down 15%. But this was, their 50-plus audience was down 25%. 35-49 was down the same amount. So you're looking at all their major demos were down from 20 to 25%. And on the screen, you can see Brendan Thurston releasing the quarter hours, which we don't often see for Raw. And you can just see the pattern there. Quarter one was abnormally low, even by the standards you would expect moving to Syfy. And I think that's as simple as people finding where Raw was on Monday. And then you see that, four quarters worth of growth during the commercial-free hour, peaking with the Miz TV segment with just over 1.5 million viewers, and the peak in 18 to 49 being the Bobby Lashley promo, and our first of 2 sessions involving Alexa Bliss and her therapist.
Mm-hmm. All those poor people who might have missed out on the opening of the Quiz Bowl.
Probably the high point of the show, not in numbers, but in terms of show quality, I would say would be the most entertaining 20 minutes of the show.
Well, maybe they can go back and find some highlights, but do you expect much difference next week?
Maybe a little bit better. We should know, like the Olympics, Raw still beat everything on cable except for the Olympics. So this was hardly a show that it just tanked her by any stretch. It was technically the least watched episode of Raw, of a first run edition of Raw in its history. But again, many asterisks that go with that. To me, like that's still beat college basketball. It's like you're not beating the Olympics, and that's where it's going to be. I would say next week, you do have Lesnar on the show, and you also have the familiarity. I think those people that were finding the show this week probably are aware next week it's on Syfy, so maybe a little increase next week. More importantly, it's in 2 weeks from now, just recovering your entire audience and how long that takes. Will it be 1 week? Will it be 2 weeks until they're back to normal on USA, which they should be on top of cable for the foreseeable future until, sports playoffs really ramp up, and that's not going to be until May. So there you have it. And NXT 2.0 on Tuesday night, a pretty newsworthy edition of the show, highlighted by the appearance of Dolph Ziggler. And as I was watching this segment, it was a small thing, but it just told me that if you had done this brand split like in a really meaningful fashion, there's so much you could draw from of just somebody showing up on a different show, because you do have that line of delineation between NXT and Raw and SmackDown, so that when someone the level of Dolph Ziggler shows up, these 200 fans lose their minds because it's special. It's different. You don't see this every time. Ziggler showing up on SmackDown would be a non-story, nothing of any consequence. And this is Dolph Ziggler we're talking about on NXT, and this crowd, which, let me say, these 200 fans, NXT should be just thanking these people. The amount of noise that these fans make, they are probably the easiest crowd to perform in front of, because they made that opener with Grizzled Young Vets and the Creed brothers, and they made this segment with Dolph and treating him like a star.
I totally agree. I mean, but I would also say, I thought the Grizzled Young Veterans and the Creed brothers actually did really well on their own, but certainly having the atmosphere provided to them by, the CWC crowd absolutely heightened things. And yeah, what a stark contrast. I feel like it was only maybe a few days ago when I was complaining about seeing yet another Dolph Ziggler segment with, who is it? I forget, like the Street Profits or something. And like, how could I possibly care about another match involving Dolph Ziggler and any random number of tag team partners that we've seen by this point a million times? You put him in a different setting with a fresh atmosphere, with a fresh set of opponents, and a fresh story. It makes a world of difference. He felt like somebody who I was actually interested in for the first time in a long while. This crowd was chanting Dolph Ziggler for the first time in a long while. And very simple story. He has won every single championship that is available in the WWE. The only one missing from his collection is the NXT championship, and that's all you need. I'm actually quite excited to see what he does.
I could have gone without the one line that he had to get in there about, every 100 matches I have, 99 don't go my way. I don't think we have to put a spotlight on that this guy is largely a non-entity on the main roster. Like you're being treated as a big deal here. Let's lean into that perception here instead of calling out the obvious here that these fans don't want to hear. But nonetheless, that was a small line that was in this segment. But it would seem, just based on the presentation on Tuesday, that you do Dolph and Ciampa first, and that sets up probably your not takeover, but stand and deliver main event for Braun Breaker. I would think.
I'm interested in both those matches. I mean, more so Ciampa versus Ziggler than Breaker. But if that is the order, we could presume that Ziggler will beat Ciampa and go on to lose to Braun Breaker. But to get two fresh matches out of a guy who otherwise is a pretty stale, unremarkable at this point, not very special performer on. Is he on Raw or SmackDown? I don't even remember. He's on Raw. Okay, are you sure about that?
No. I'm pretty sure he's on Raw.
I mean, it tells you that, hey, like, remember when we are all suggesting, hey, can people move down to NXT to refreshen their characters? We've seen them do it with AJ Styles. It's really not more than really one shot appearances, but nonetheless, at least for those 1 or 2 weeks, these guys do feel special.
Certainly, yeah. I think that there was a lot to come out of that, and they kind of ran the risk of like Santos Escobar being forgotten, but they did do like the beatdown at the end, and I thought Santos Escobar, especially in those final minutes, came off pretty well. Like I'm looking forward to that match next week with Escobar, who's a great talent and doesn't often get a lengthy match to have, and that's going to be the featured match next week on the program. I guess the rest coming out of the show, we have the finals of the Dusty Classic as MSK beat Idris Enofe and Malik Blade, and the Creeds defeated Grizzled Young Vets. And the Creeds, like, you can certainly see elements of their game that still need work. They're still very, very new to all of this, but I thought this match came off very well, and I'm very confident that these Creed brothers are going to turn into like a pretty strong tag team when you are considering how little experience they have. Like they have a lot of the tools that you have to be looking at and seeing a very high ceiling for these two.
Absolutely. Considering the level of experience, I mean, GYV are absolutely tremendous, and I think that this match was very much a testament to them. But I thought the Creed brothers showed a whole lot in their tag team maneuvers. They were playing straight up baby faces in this match, and I thought they were absolutely tremendous. So, you give them a bit more seasoning, let them speak a bit more, give them a bit more personality and a bit more comfort and charisma in the ring. In a few years' time, I could definitely see them being, successful call-ups.
Mm-hmm. I really I also enjoyed like the barbershop segment with Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams. I've got to say, of the NXT 2.0 era, like I think everyone's going to slot Braun Breaker as probably the most successful project in these early months. I think Carmelo Hayes is 1B to Braun Breaker's 1A. I think this guy comes off as a really big star. He feels very important. They have been very clever in how they have been able to really get his personality across. I think Trick Williams is excellent in his role. These two just have tremendous chemistry together. I think Carmelo Hayes has been a big hit here in NXT 2.0, and there's certainly been a lot that's been thrown against the wall that have not stuck. He would not be one of them.
I agree, absolutely, yeah. And let me also take the time to, commend NXT's production team for continuing to go out there and shoot these very good-looking, I think very well-produced segments outside of the arena. In comparison to some of the stuff we get with these Alexa Bliss segments, I think NXT continues to do incredibly well with their staff and what the type of personality pieces that they're able to get out of their new talents when they're outside of the arena. And this barbershop one was one of them. It felt completely authentic to, I think, what the character might be off screen. And I think told you a whole lot about, what his ambitions are, and does a whole lot. Carmelo Hayes to me is somebody who is more of like, maybe an NXT 1.75, type of project, in that he was already, I think, he fit very well in the black and gold era, because I thought he was already very seasoned. And then the transition to 2.0, holding one of those championships, just, seemed to propel him into the spotlight. But I would say he to me is a grade above, for instance, the Creed brothers.
And then Mandy Rose retains the women's title, and as the attack continued on Kaylee Ray, Io Shirai making the save, so it appears those two will be paired together in the Women's Dusty Classic that starts in 2 weeks' time on February 22nd.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Do we have all the teams for the Women's Dusty yet?
No, I think all they've announced so far, like we know we're getting Cora Jade and Raquel Gonzalez. It looks like we're getting Yulissa Leone and Valentina, the team of Kaylee Ray and Shirai, and Beyond that, probably, I mean, you have your teams. Like Catanzaro and Caden Carter would make sense to be in this. You presumably have 8 teams, and they've still got to, I guess, assemble that. Maybe next week we'll get the lineup, the brackets.
We had Wendy Chu versus Tiffany Stratton. And by the way, what about that finisher that Stratton debuted? That sort of corkscrew Vader splash? Mm-hmm. It looked awesome. It looked really cool. But she beat Wendy Chu, and then Wendy Chu seemed to be starting something with Dakota Kai. It could either be a feud or it could potentially be a tag team that we might see between the two. So
well, they didn't seem to get along, so that could up their chances of teaming together. I really question what the future is for Dakota Kai here. Like, it just seems that like this was a pretty clear, like this was a 4-minute loss to Wendy Chu, to Saray, and then setting something up with Wendy Chu, but it sort of just feels like Dakota Kai is this holdover from the last regime and figuring out like what her role is going to be in this version of NXT. Like, it just seems she's sort of in the veteran role, which is kind of odd.
It is, yeah.
Because I don't look at her as someone that's like her best days are behind her. But that's,
oh God, no.
You quickly become branded as that in this company, in this brand, I should say, of NXT.
Yeah. I mean, there are roles for people like a Tommaso Ciampa and a Roderick Strong within NXT to use to, ultimately push your people that are your actual projects. And I think Dakota Kai kind of finds herself in a similar role. Again, if it's a transition to the tag team division, I think, that's something maybe a bit more fresh for her. But ultimately, I kind of see her as being sort of like a mentor to, some of these other projects.
So next Tuesday, the Vengeance Day special has Braun Breaker and Santos Escobar for the NXT Championship, Carmelo Hayes and Cameron Grimes for the North American title. NXT Tag Team Champions Gigi Dolan and JC Jane defend against Indy Hartwell and Persha Parada, with the history now revealed of Indy Hartwell and Duke Hudson via photo evidence that has been introduced. MSK against the Creeds in the finals of the Dusty Classic. Pete Dunne against Tony D'Angelo in a weaponized steel cage match. And then Grayson Waller attempts to have LA Knight arrested.
Okay.
Nothing like telegraphing an arrest in advance. So for a week, the cops are on alert. And they can only make an arrest on a Tuesday night in this 2-hour window.
You should lawyer up in that time. Read his rights. But yeah, as far as the card goes, what I think you'll see everybody put in their best effort. It's going to be a combination of people with a lot of experience and people with very little experience. And I'm looking at Pete Dunne versus Tony D'Angelo in a steel cage match, and wondering what that's going to look like. So,
with weapons.
With weapons, yeah. So I mean, I think anytime you have a veteran like Pete Dunne, I don't think the match can really go. Well, how bad can it really be? And it might even be very impressive. Santos Escobar versus Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker has passed every test he's been given so far, so I don't think this will be any different. And will it be of a standard of an NXT main event? I mean, we shall see. But I'm looking forward now to the Creed Brothers versus MSK, especially after the Creed Brothers performance this week. I think that could be a definite show stealer. Who do you think takes it?
I think the Creeds probably win this.
I think so too. Yeah.
If not, I think you do the deal where it's like it's a super competitive match and you really try and put the emphasis on the Creeds in losing, that this was their big step up moment even in defeat. But I could also see the other argument, let's just put them over, and like this whole brand is about creating new stars, and MSK is sort of in that role as well, where they're sort of the established team, and this is about this is a brand about the Tony D'Angelos. It's about the Creeds. So I could see the Creeds certainly winning this one. I wanted to chat a bit about AAA. They announced the participants and the opening round matches for their Ruleta de la Muerte, their Roulette of Death tournament that they have set up over 3 TripleMania events this year. So they're doing April 30th, June 18th, and October 15th. These are going to be their big TripleMania shows this year. And it's going to feature 8 masked wrestlers of varying levels of experience. They will be meeting and weigh in this unique twist. The tournament, the losers advance in the tournament. And once it gets to the finals, the ultimate loser will be unmasked. And this will feature Kinect taking on Psycho Clown, Viano 4 versus LA Park, Pentagon Jr. versus Ultimo Dragon, Rayo Dialisco Jr., against Blue Demon Jr., and those matches will be taking place April 30th. So we have got the youngest, outside of Psycho Clown and Pentagon, who are the youth of this tournament. Our youngest performers are Ultimo and Blue Demon Jr., each at 55 years of age. We then go to LA Park and Viano 4, who are each 56. Rayo de Jalisco Jr., 62 years old, and the veteran Kanek, 69-year-old Kanek, will be putting his mask on the line in this tournament. Dude, this is going to be some wild wrestling that we see in this tournament. I crave a Pentagon Jr. Kanek match, or Pentagon and Rayo de Jalisco. I mean, there are some insane pairings that we are going to see. This could produce some absolutely terrible wrestling, but at the same time, some massive stars that are also in this tournament. And hopefully, like, there is a great payoff here to someone being unmasked, and there isn't any lucha-related issues that get in the way of a clear-cut loser at the end of this, because this is of any of these 8, it's a notable mask that is being removed in theory.
Absolutely. They always say, hey, put on face paint or wear a mask, to hide your age. And that certainly would be the case when Ultimo Dragon is amongst the youngest in this crop. That I had no idea.
At least Ultimo's wrestling regularly, like with Dragon Gate. But some like Rayo de Jalisco Jr., dude, like, it's yikes is all I can say.
Okay. Well, I mean, that certainly, and to me, adds a different twist. But I think the concept is cool. I mean, when we say advance, we really mean it's sort of a, descent.
You're not building to a reward. You're building to a penalty, to a consequence.
You're fighting to get out of the stipulation.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
Which I think is perfectly sensible and a very interesting concept. So, the concept itself, I'm interested to see how it plays out. The matches, maybe I might even be more interested in now that I know the ages.
And we'll finish off looking at Dynamite tonight, which, I mean, really, it's 2 big things, and this has to be, as of Wednesday afternoon, maybe the least that has been announced for a Dynamite in advance. We have Hangman Page making his 3rd defense of the AEW Championship against Lance Archer in a Texas death match. The arrival of the mystery free agent who will take on Isaiah Cassidy in the qualifier for the Face of the Revolution ladder match that takes place at the pay-per-view next month. The Inner Circle will hold a team meeting. We will hear from MJF, and Tony Khan has a huge, huge announcement tonight.
So this is a different announcement from, of course, the participant, the free agent that he's been teasing that's going to face Isaiah Cassidy?
I mean, I don't know if it's actually 2 separate things or not.
Wait a second. So come on, they're 2 different graphics. You can't have the announcement be also the guy who's going to be in the
Well, last week he had said that his huge announcement for Rampage and the free agent that is coming is one and the same. But this is a separate huge announcement, so I take it as 2 things.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah. I'll say Page versus Archer. It's a championship match, but it's not one I'm hearing a whole lot of buzz about. Nonetheless, I mean, Page hasn't really felt like the most active champion lately, so I feel like this is going to be a big match for him, where he's going to be, dependent on to deliver, and I think he will against Lance Archer. But
I think the match is going to be pretty strong. The question is Lance Archer. That is, he's had some short matches on Dark, but I mean, since that errant moonsault, that was last October. I mean, this is his biggest match he has had since then, and it's a high bar when you're promoting a Texas death match where people are going to expect violence, and it's a big championship match that is probably going to be closing the show.
But all eyes are going to be on this debuting free agent. At what level of superstar would you say, John, it has to match to meet expectations at this point?
I think that it does somewhat, when you do this, that you do somewhat paint yourself in a corner. And I think if it is any of the WWE released talent that just had their no competes end, I think it's really unfortunate if it's one of those, because I think a Keith Lee would be great, but I think like it's one that you build it up so much that it's got to be something that is just stunning and out of left field, rather than one that is almost expected now, which AEW has totally welcomed you to speculate and assume in that direction.
I think the crowd would react really well for Keith Lee. To me, Keith Lee is like the biggest of the crop of free agents, and if the crowd saw him appear in an AEW set or a ring, I think they'd go plenty. The reaction would be plenty big. I just don't know how out of left field it can really be when what are the qualifications? It has to be a free agent, somebody who's going to permanently shut the forbidden door.
What does that mean?
I guess somebody who's never going to go back to their prior company.
Oh, okay. So the door is still forbidden to enter. They haven't locked this mythical door so that
I guess everybody has their own door. Each person.
Do they each get a key card?
I would guess so. How else would you lock it? Unless it was just like a clicker,
Maybe there's a retina scan.
Like a high tech door. Yeah, it depends on the company, I suppose.
It's got to correspond with your legality to sign a contract elsewhere.
Okay. Anyway, building up some big expectations for everybody. Tony Khan is, and I think usually they come through on those surprises. Sometimes I think they've left fans disappointed, and we'll see. When do you think they'll do it? Do you think it'll be the first match? Do you think it'll be later?
If I had a big surprise, I'd do it early with the hope that buzz is going to circulate. And if it's something really big, I would argue that you introduce the person early and then announce they're wrestling later on in the show, so come back for it. Like Keith, if it is a Keith Lee, he's going to get over tremendously having a match with Isaiah Cassidy, because we're going to likely see a Keith Lee we have not seen in years, at least going back to earlier in his NXT run. So I would kind of want that out there. So the whole buzz is that Keith Lee is back and he's going to be wrestling in an hour. So tune into the show.
So by the way, is Tony Khan actually going to do the announcing? Because he's never really come out and actually done it. It's usually just the entrance, right? Tony Khan. It's not like Tony. I'm not expecting Tony to be like, "Hey guys, welcome to the show. Here is such and such."
What if they did like a take on the Saray entrance, where the person is walking from the back, you can't see them, and they go through like a CGI door?
Okay, sure.
And then walk out into the crowd.
Yeah, a CGI door. Yeah,
where
how
it says
far
"Do
away?
Not enter." It's locked, and the person has the key.
How have we not seen WWE do an AR forbidden door yet?
It's coming. It's coming. The much lauded forbidden door. As we desperately seek a new analogy for free agent signings, but that's I would say like the big thing on tonight's show, even above the championship match. So you are right. I think for a lot of these surprises, they largely like delivered, but at other times, like you promote so much that it just people get very high expectations. Like last year, they grabbed a guy who had not wrestled in 7 years, who had just been in the Royal Rumble, and people were like disappointed by that, and that was clearly a result of the heavy promotion, while they are still trying to sell a pay-per-view and draw money off of like a surprise like that. This is not that particular instance, but it's the good and the bad that comes with a surprise. You raise expectations and you have to meet those.
And how about ratings, John? Last week I think most would consider to be a bit disappointing, considering it was MJF versus CM Punk, and the ratings actually being the lowest of the TBS era. Do you think there's a bounce back? Do you think it's the same this week?
I'm not expecting this to be one of the. If last week was the lowest of the year on TBS, I would say this is probably going to be around that range. We don't know how much the Olympics are going to hurt AEW, but if we're looking at like a 20% hit that WWE took, I think you have to imagine in the ballpark of that. If they can maintain more, I would say that's certainly you credit this surprise and the title match as being enough that it was able to offset some of that loss. But I think we have to go into the show expecting a similar decline that AEW is going to take over these 2 weeks as well, although they don't have to move networks.
And if you want to play the guessing game, everybody, join the WrestleNomics channel at postwrestling.com/Discord. Make your predictions right now and then see who gets closest. I was informed, John, it's not simply guessing the right answer. It's accumulating over the course of however long it is. So there's a ranking system of who gets it closest most of the time, and you're rewarded based on how close you are.
Okay, I like that. So there's more of it's not just a one and done every week. There you go. It's a seasonal guessing game of the AEW demo. Perfect. So check that out on the Post Wrestling Discord in the WrestleNomics chat, and do follow all of Brandon Thurston's work. He had a great breakdown of the quarter hours for Raw from this past Monday, and you can hear him every Sunday here on the WrestleNomics Network. We also have an interview up on the site and here on the channel with Michael Oku that we conducted on Tuesday, chatting about his recent 5-star match with Will Ospreay. That people seem to enjoy the interview quite a bit. I really enjoyed chatting with him yesterday.
I did as well, yeah. Like, so incredibly humble, for a man who just had a 5-star match. And it was wonderful to, feel the excitement and of course, to be able to see his girlfriend, Amira Blair, be a part of the interview as well. The 5-star couple, as you deemed them, John. And, of course, we also have on the site the latest edition of Rewind Away, talking about WWF Greatest Hits 1991. I'm actually hearing from a number of people who have had a similar experience as our executive producer, Brent Nicol, who, for many of them, this was their first exposure to professional wrestling.
What a way to jump in. This 60 minutes, just grabbing people for life. That's amazing.
And surprisingly, they stuck around even after watching some of the quality on this. It's the box cover, John. It's Mr. Perfect getting his nuts punched in. That might have did it. So that is up for Post Wrestling Cafe patrons at patreon.com/postwrestling. And of course, also our friends at Up Next, Braden and Davey, doing their shows remotely. One from Davey is just, quite the trooper, going halfway across the world, staying up until 3 a.m. to do these shows. So give our friends at Up Next a subscribe and a follow.
Dude, he's starting these shows at 3 a.m. and then they go like 2 hours. Yeah, exactly. The podcasts themselves. Yeah. It's crazy. And he's working like 10 different jobs now, it seems like, in London. So shout out to Davey and Braden and all the great work those guys do. All right. So check out all of those shows as well. And we are back tonight, 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We are live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights for our patrons. Tonight for Double Ice Cap and Espresso members of the cafe. So if you want to listen to us live and watch the show, you can do so tonight. If not, the podcast version will be up late tonight. And then we return tomorrow to do it all over again. So thank you for watching the Post Daily News Show.